Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a condition that's, well, it's profoundly misunderstood. We're talking about hirsutism in women.
Right, and we're working from a whole stack of sources, endocrine society guidelines, clinical reports, to really move past the idea that this is just, a cosmetic issue.
So that's the mission for this deep dive.
That's the mission, to distill all this complex info into clear, actionable knowledge for you. We want to get into the hormones, the metabolism, and the actual treatment strategies that work.
Okay, so let's start with that precision. When a clinician says hirsutism, what exactly are they talking about? It's not just any hair.
No, absolutely not. And that's the first crucial distinction. Hirsutism is the growth of coarse, dark, terminal hair.
So not the fine peach fuzz.
Exactly. It's thick hair, but specifically in what we call a male-like or androgen-dependent pattern. So think face, chest, lower abdomen, inner thighs.
And this is different from just being generally hairy.
Yes. That's a condition called hypertrichosis, which is generalized and isn't driven by androgens. Hirsutism, at its core, is a disorder of androgen action. And it's common. We're talking 5 to 15% of reproductive age women.
And the androgens, hormones like testosterone, are basically flipping a switch.
That's it. They're transforming those fine, light vellus hairs in these coarse terminal ones, but only in those areas that are genetically wired to respond.
But here's where it gets really interesting and where the sources go much deeper. It's not just about the hormones themselves, but about our metabolism.
This is the absolute core of it. The link between insulin resistance and androgen production is, well, we really can't overstate it.
So hyperinsulinemia, the high insulin levels you see with PCOS or obesity, it's not just a side effect, it's an active driver of the problem.
It's an active hormonal agitator. It does two very specific things that make everything worse. First, those high insulin levels directly stimulate the ovaries.
To produce more androgens.
To produce more androgens. So you're literally increasing the fuel supply for the hair growth.
Wow. Okay, so that's one mechanism.
At the exact same time, insulin tells the liver to slow down its production of something called sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG.
And SHBG is like the body's natural sponge, right? It soaks up testosterone.
It's the perfect analogy. It binds to testosterone, making it inactive. So when insulin lowers the amount of that sponge,
you get more free, active testosterone just floating around, ready to act on those hair follicles.
You got it. It's a double whammy. You're making more fuel, and you're getting rid of the body's natural buffer against it.
That completely reframes the issue. It's not just cosmetic, it's deeply metabolic.
Which is why our sources all come back to lifestyle changes. Things like weight loss that improve insulin sensitivity are a cornerstone of management. You're turning down the hormonal volume at its source.
Okay, so it's a systemic issue. Let's move to the diagnostic map. How does a clinician actually quantify this?
The gold standard tool is the modified Ferriman-Galway scoring system.
Right.
And it's important because it forces an objective measure. It grades hair growth from 0, which is none, to 4, which is frankly virile, across 9 of those specific androgen-sensitive sites.
And then you add up the score. But the sources point out a really surprising fact about that score. The threshold for what's considered abnormal isn't universal.
Not at all. It varies massively by ethnicity. For Black and white women in the US, a score of 8 or higher is typically the cutoff.
Okay, score of 8. But for Asian women?
It drops to 2 or more.
2? That's a huge difference. What does that tell us?
It tells us that it's not just about the level of hormones in your blood. It's about how sensitive your hair follicles are to those hormones. Some ethnicities just have follicles that are more easily activated.
So you can have normal androgen levels, but still have clinically significant hirsutism.
Precisely. Now, once it's scored, the vast majority of cases, over 85%, fall into 2 buckets.
And the big one is PCOS.
Polycystic ovary syndrome is the major player, 70 to 80% of cases. And it comes with those other signs, irregular cycles, acne, and often that insulin resistance we just talked about.
And the other bucket?
That's called idiopathic hirsutism, about 10 to 25% of cases. This is where you have hirsutism. But androgen levels are normal and cycles are regular. It's likely that follicular hypersensitivity we mentioned.
But the diagnosis isn't just about figuring that out. It's also about ruling out the really serious, though rare, possibilities.
This is the critical safety check. First, you screen for something called non-classic congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or NCAH. It's a genetic disorder, about 3% of cases.
And that's a simple blood test.
A simple blood test. An early morning 17-hydroxyprogesterone level. It's just important to know it's more common in certain groups: Ashkenazi Jews, Hispanics, Slavic populations.
And then there's the big red flag, the one that requires immediate action.
The androgen-secreting tumor. It is incredibly rare, less than 0.3% of cases, but you have to look for it.
And the warning sign is speed.
Speed. A sudden, rapid onset of severe hirsutism. If it changes dramatically over a few months, especially with other signs of virilization, like a deepening voice, muscle changes, that requires immediate imaging, a CT or an MRI.
Okay, so that's the diagnostic pathway. Let's talk treatment. The hardest part here seems to be managing expectations about how long it takes.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably the biggest source of frustration. You have to tell patients that medical therapy will take a minimum of 6 months to really start working.
6 months minimum.
And often 9 months to see the maximal effect.
Why so long? What's the biology behind that delay?
Well, you have to remember that the hair you see today grew under the influence of the old high hormone levels. The medication can't do anything about that existing hair.
So you have to wait for it to fall out naturally?
You have to wait for it to complete its entire growth cycle, which for facial hair is about 4 months, and shed. Only then can the new suppressed hair grow in its place. The whole process just takes time.
So knowing that, what's the first line medical strategy?
For most women who aren't trying to conceive, the guidelines all point to combined oral contraceptives, COCs.
The birth control pill.
Yes. They work by, 1, suppressing the ovaries from making too many androgens, and 2, they increase that SHBG sponge.
Ah, so they directly counteract both of the problems caused by high insulin.
Exactly. They turn down production, and they help soak up what's already there.
Is any particular pill better than another?
For hirsutism, they all seem to be about equally effective. But there is a safety note. For women with a higher risk of blood clots, say if you're obese or over 39, the guidelines suggest using a pill with the lowest effective dose of estrogen.
And if the pill isn't enough after that 6-month mark?
Then you add on an anti-androgen. Spironolactone is the most common one. It works by directly blocking the androgen receptors on the hair follicle itself.
But these come with a very serious warning.
The critical warning: anti-androgens are teratogenic. They can cause birth defects in a male fetus, so reliable contraception is an absolute must. You cannot get pregnant while taking them.
And there's one anti-androgen the guidelines specifically warn against.
That's flutamide. The Endocrine Society recommends strongly against it. Even though it's effective, it carries a risk of severe liver toxicity, even liver failure and death. The risk just isn't worth it when there are safer options.
So that's the systemic approach. What about dealing with the hair that's already there, especially during that long wait?
That's where topical therapy is a great adjunct, specifically eflornithine cream, brand name Vanica.
And how does that work?
It inhibits an enzyme in the hair follicle that's essential for growth. The key thing to understand is that it slows growth. It doesn't remove hair.
So it makes managing the hair with, say, shaving or waxing easier.
Much easier. And you see results in about 6 to 8 weeks, so it's a fantastic bridge while you're waiting for the oral medications to kick in. And it's fully reversible if you stop using it.
Let's pivot to the more permanent procedural option.
Right. So beyond shaving and waxing, you have 2 main long-term paths. The first is photoepilation, so laser and intense pulsed light.
This is for people with darker hair, right?
Correct. It works by targeting melanin, the pigment in the hair follicle. It's great for auburn, brown, or black hair, and can give you a 40 to 80% hair reduction over a course of treatments.
But that mechanism, targeting pigment, creates a specific risk for women of color.
A very real risk. The laser can't always tell the difference between pigment in the hair and pigment in the skin. So for darker skin tones, the recommendation is very clear. Use long wavelength lasers, like an N/Ag or diode, and always with skin cooling.
To prevent burns or pigment changes.
To dramatically reduce that risk, yes.
And there's another strange complication with laser, particularly on the face.
Yes, paradoxical hypertrichosis. It's rare, but clinicians need to warn women, especially of Mediterranean or Middle Eastern descent, about it. It's where the laser treatment can actually stimulate more hair growth instead of removing it.
Wow, so what's the option for people laser won't work for, like those with blonde or white hair?
Then the go-to is electrolysis. It's the only method that's considered truly permanent. It uses an electric current to destroy each follicle one by one.
One by one sounds tedious.
It's painful, it's time-consuming, and it's expensive. It's usually reserved for smaller areas where laser isn't an option.
We started this by saying this is so often dismissed as a cosmetic issue, but the sources paint a very different picture of the psychological toll.
The psychological burden is staggering. The data is clear. One study found 81% of patients had abnormal psychosocial effects. Another showed that over 70% of women with the condition experienced moderate to severe anxiety.
70%. So for the vast majority of women, this isn't a minor annoyance, it's a source of genuine mental distress.
It is. It's low confidence, social withdrawal, anxiety, depression. And these effects are most pronounced in young, working, and unmarried women. It really impacts quality of life.
Which means the treatment has to be holistic. It can't just be a prescription.
It has to be. Effective management integrates everything. It's the lifestyle changes to help with insulin. It's the medical therapy, the COCs and anti-androgens. And it's the cosmetic strategies for immediate relief. And it all has to be wrapped in clear communication about that 6 to 9 month timeline.
And just to close a loop on medications, there are a few others, like metformin, that the guidelines suggest not using for this.
That's right. The Endocrine Society recommends against using insulin sensitizers like metformin for the sole purpose of treating hirsutism. They just aren't as effective as the hormonal options. And more powerful drugs like GnRH agonists are only for the most severe refractory cases.
So we've really taken this deep dive today. We've moved from the surface, the cosmetic, down to the endocrine and metabolic roots of hirsutism, through the diagnostic map, and into this multi-pronged treatment plan.
And I think the key takeaway for you, our listener, is that while most cases are driven by manageable conditions like PCOS, you have to be vigilant. That sudden, rapid onset is the one thing that should always trigger an immediate, urgent conversation with your doctor.
And I guess that leaves me with a final thought, building on what our sources say. If the link between insulin resistance and androgen excess is so strong, so foundational, how much of the future of managing hirsutism will depend less on these hormonal blockers and more on rigorous, proactive metabolic health management through diet and lifestyle? It feels like we're treating a hormonal disease that might actually be, at its very root, a metabolic one.